Good morning, everyone. As you heard, my name is Angela, and I would like to take this opportunity to invite a very formidable panel, and you will agree with me that they are the people that we need to be hearing from on matters environment in oil and gas. And I would like to start by inviting Ms. Rita Mwadime to the podium. Rita Mwadime, as you can see from from our profile, is a member of the Environmental Institute of Kenya. She is also a professional chemical engineer and has in-depth knowledge in environmental health and safety systems. So Rita, please. And next, I would also like to invite Mr. Shalom Ndiku. Shalom? Yes, Mr. Shalom Ndiku is representing Friends of Lake Turkana, an NGO that is concerned with advocacy and policy research and knowledge management, headquartered in Turkana. He's a lawyer by profession. He has previously worked with natural justice, and unfortunately we will not be having Rose Birgen from natural justice, but Shalom Ndiku will do a good presentation of civil society from his point. Next, I would like to introduce Mr. Professor Jacob Kibwage from OMAC. Professor Jacob Kibwage has 21 years experience in environment, health and safety. He is a lead expert registered with EIK, and he will give us a perspective on environmental impact assessments, the environment and social impact assessments and audits, and what their role is in terms of EHS in oil and gas sector. I'd also like to invite Mr. Marion Kioko. Marion Kioko is the Chief Environmental Officer from NEMA. She is the one who is standing by as all the others report to government. She's going to be in the hot seat today on behalf of NEMA, and please, your questions. I will try and keep her on her toes, but I am pretty sure you are ready with more questions and burning questions on environment. So on this panel, we're going to be discussing environment. Later, my colleagues will discuss health and safety, and so we begin. Again, good morning, panel. It's very nice to have you here. And I want to start by throwing a question to just all of you right here. And my question is, as it would be remiss for us to skip the burning issue that has made global conversations. Why are we still talking about oil and gas, despite the Paris Agreement, despite the move from the global move from oil and gas and hydrocarbons? Why are we still having this conversation? And yet, there seems to be a bleak future for oil and gas.
Thank you very much, and thank you for this opportunity. I would just like to say that, yes, indeed, as a country, Kenya is part to the Paris Agreement, and therefore we are all holding arms together towards the global goals that are embodied in the Sustainable Development Goals. So, having said that, it means we should not be talking about very clean energy, but here we are in this forum talking about oil and gas. And of course, that goes into the pollution aspects. But when you look at the energy demands globally and also for Kenya, and if you look at the pace at which we are developing clean energy, the clean energy is currently not able to match up with the global demands. So it is a sector that is growing, and I think in the fullness of time, we'll be able to phase out use of such kind of fuels like the petroleum fuels. But of course, like in other countries, like in Germany, Europe, they already have agendas. I think they have by 2030, they want to go up to certain targets of clean energy. So I believe even for us in Africa and in Kenya, those are the kind of trends we should be making towards cleaner energy. So we should be able to work with petroleum energy, make best endeavors, and I think that's why we are here, to make sure that we're able to use it in a clean way, as clean as possible, meeting acceptable international standards. But obviously, as party to being members of the Paris Agreement, we should be working towards that. Thank you.
Thank you, Rita. And I think Rita has spoken well. It would not, be worth belaboring some of her very good points. But I think one other thing to note is that as a country, we're very blessed with varied sources of energy, and from wind power to solar to geothermal, and to coal, sadly, and even with petroleum now, and even natural gas deposits up north and off the coast. And I think one thing that the government states is always that we have a balanced energy source, and it's about how to think about tapping into that. But as Richard said, in the next 10 years, in the next 20 years, I think two trends are most likely to happen. We're yet to tap the full renewable energy potential in this country. And I think that will drastically change how much we depend on fossil fuels, including oil and gas, and coal especially. But second as well, the price of renewable energy is dropping. It's becoming cheaper and cheaper over time. And so I think those two trends will really make us question our reliance on them. I think at this early stage, we're still figuring out what to do with what we've discovered, particularly with oil and coal in the last decade. But going forward, I think that will change, and I think there should be a push for that, and hopefully this discussion will bring about some solutions.
Thank you so much. I'd like to add just one point. We have no option of currently actually going into the use of hydrocarbons. The major reason is because various forms of energy, there are also various types of uses. So we have limitations. There are sectors where, of course, we have this renewable energy like solar, wind, and the rest. But at the end of the day, there are limitations where you can be able to use that energy. There are some industrial sectors that you will not be able to use that. Let's talk about the automobile sector. That is the transport sector in general. Of course, currently there is a lot of research that is ongoing, where you can be able to have cars which can be able to use solar and all this, batteries and the rest. Of course, I've seen some of them already here, but we are not yet there. It will take us time. I've seen motorbikes using solar batteries, but still we are not yet there as Kenya. So we need to make use of these resources. But I think over time, as my colleague has said, in the next 30, 50 years, we will be there, where we will be able to switch from this kind of resources, hydrocarbons, to other renewable resources. So it's a matter of time. But for now, we have to look at how sustainable we can be able to make use of this resource without destroying the environment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Again, maybe it's important to still give the apologies of my Director General and the Director Compliance and Enforcement was supposed to be here. I hope I'll be able to fit in their shoes. Thank you very much. So thanks for the question. I think I totally agree with the panelists that yes, we will get there. It might take us some time, but we will get there. And just one more point which I would just want to add is that as the one sitting here for government, is just to assure everyone that we will do everything possible to make sure that the environment is protected. Yes, Professor is here. He will talk much about the environmental impact assessment and everything. And I think in the meantime, as we give ourselves time, because we have to start from somewhere, as we give ourselves time to be able to fully go into the clean energy, we have to put measures in place to ensure that the oil and gas is safe for the environment. So I think for us as government and from NEMA's point of view, it's just to say that we put every measures in place to ensure that the environmental impact assessments are done and the mitigation measures that have been proposed are actually put in place to ensure that the environment is protected. In the meantime, as we transition into the clean energy. Thank you.
And Marian, following up on that, and as a representative of government, do you feel that it is necessary to have a petroleum-specific environmental legislation, environmental protection legislation, or should we stick with what we have and adapt it to the current changes, to the current situation, to take care of the new energy sources that we have?
Thank you. I think, as I've said, I will still go back to that. We will give ourselves time. We start from somewhere and move forward. Maybe as we start, we work with what we have. Yes, we have different legislations dealing with specific sectors of the oil and gas, the petroleum sector. So as we start, we would say, let's start with what we have and work towards maybe in the long run, if necessary, because we already have, like for example, we have the Environmental Management and Information Act, which has helped put the different sectoral legislation on environment in place. And so far from the lessons learned, maybe in the long run, we can have one legislation that actually kind of coordinates the different sectors of the different sectors of petroleum. Yeah, that would be my thoughts. Okay.
Yeah. Shalom, you've had a chance to deal with community on the ground, and in this particular case, you have had a chance to deal with the Turkana community. And the issue of oil has been with us since around 2013 when we discussed, when we really realized it's commercially viable. But yet, what we are already seeing instances of unrest and instances of disgruntled community members. Has there been a failure on the EIA process, on industry, on government? Who failed? Why are we where we are right now?
And I think that's a good question. And before I go on, I hope there is an opportunity for Q&A because we have some representatives from Turkana here. Enoch, James, Lydia, and I hope that they will be allowed also to share their insight. So one example which I hope Enoch can speak to later is within some of these processes. I think the EIA process is, it's stipulated in law. It's stipulated in MCA, there's section 5051. If you go to the EIA regulations, the process is stipulated. It's somewhat lengthy, it's somewhat complex, it entails a lot. It entails a lot of processes, a lot of stakeholders. And I think in the entirety of that process, confusion can arise, or at times there's a lack of clarity. And I'm speaking as a practitioner who's engaged with it on different projects, including the oil exploration. So an example of an issue that's arisen and could potentially exacerbate the challenges up north is, so for example, in Tuga 1, one of the wells, currently, and if I'm wrong on facts, I hope some people can correct me when the panel is open, but there's a holding site for some hazardous waste. Now that hazardous waste, at that point, waste disposal occurs. And if you look at the Constitution now, post 2010, especially 2013, certain functions were devolved to the county government, certain functions remained with national, but certain functions were shared. So waste disposal seems to be a shared function because NEMA still oversees some mandates with respect to waste disposal, but the county does as well. But it creates a lacuna where a community member, if they're grazing around that area, and livestock, for example, eat contaminated pasture, and something happens to them, worst case scenario, they die, then it's unclear what channels to go, because if they go to one authority, then they wash their hands of the situation. If you go to another, the same thing is done. And all of a sudden, that frustration is vented out. The other challenge with that is that if you look at it from the more technical perspective, waste disposal permits are also required, but it's unclear who should grant them, how they should be granted. And so all of a sudden, some of this conduct takes place that might not have been addressed in an original EIA, but when the project takes a different life, it brings about these challenges. So there seems to be a very complex process, but throughout that process, if there's no clarity as to who is responsible for what, as to what communities can go to if there's a problem, then that will just bounce back as frustration on their part and can contribute to this.
So, Professor, the question that's coming up is EIA related, and you're an expert in EIA, and it then requires that some things are foreseen on your part. So when something of this magnitude is not seems not to have been covered in EIA, like the waste issue, and now we have Trigger 1 being a problem, and all of us are blaming NEMA, all of us are angry at NEMA. Are we blaming? Of course, the person that we are seeing is NEMA. But is there a lack of adequate competence within the EIA lead expertise?
Thank you so much. I think the problem is not on the EIA itself. I've seen a lot of EIA reports done by Ogola in particular and several other oil exploration and production companies. So far, the kind of reports we get, they are good stuff. The kind of rises that we get from NEMA, the conditions, when you look at the conditions given to these companies, they are quite comprehensive. You can be able to look at, they meet the international standards when you look at the conditions. Now the problem comes in implementation of the conditions. I think that's where we have had a big problem in this country. Developers and everybody thinks that when you have gotten the NEMA rises, now you can go and do what you want. I think you have been seeing the whole of this week, houses being demolished in Nairobi here and there. It's because the NEMA conditions are very clear in those rises. How to deal with the communities, how to deal with social issues, how to deal with the riparian lands, how to deal with the communities and everything. So the problem we have had is the implementation of these conditions. Now, one of the things is how to deal with the social issues. Sometimes dealing with social issues might be beyond that oil or any other petroleum companies. You need to listen to the people. Personally, I've worked in Turkana, I've stayed in Rokja, I've stayed in the homes of the Turkana people. These are very good people that you can easily understand the culture. And they expose everything. That's the most important thing. They are very transparent when you talk to them. Right now, you are able to see point 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, what you are able to implement, things which were covered during the EIA, they are in the reports. They said the same things, and they are saying the same things. They have not changed. But we are not looking into the report and the EIA rises so that we can be able to implement these things. These people said, one of the things, I was listening even on TV, and someone said, we want to see the money on our phones. What does it mean? During the public meetings, they are always saying that we need to see us being compensated or benefiting from this money as soon as possible. These are people who have suffered and in quotes who have been marginalized over a long period of time. despite the fact that now we have devolution and things are changing quickly. If now you are taking the resource from my locality, I expect you to pay me immediately. But you are telling them, wait, we are doing the pipeline, we are doing APCD, we are doing development. They are not understanding even that oil, we have not started developing. Are you seeing that? That oil is out of exploration work, testing and the rest. We have not reached the stage of what? Production. But you see, they cannot understand this. So the only way you can deal with this is to come up with innovative ways to understand exactly what they need. In any form of law, in any form of contract, there is something even called advance payment. If you are paying the community 5 or 10%, I don't know finally the percentages. If you want to pay me after 5 years, yeah, I know you are going to pay me 1 million. You can actually start giving me an advance, or even 100 million, right now, as you start up. So we need to come up with innovative ways. Is there a way we can do advance payments, small amounts, small percentages? Yeah? If you are going to pay me 10 billion after 5 years, pay me right now even 500 million. And this 500 million, even you can divide it monthly. The government needs to be innovative. They need to take advantage of even our systems, M-PESA systems, cash transfer systems, which are well developed. Then let's pay small advances to these communities. This is what they are saying. This is what they say in public meetings. This is what is in ESI reports. So why are we not implementing? Yeah? So the whole thing in summary is that there are a lot of things that these communities talk during the EIA, during the public participation meetings. We need to go back to the minutes, what is discussed in those meetings, what is put in the EIA crisis conditions, and then be able to put more effort in implementation of those conditions. Let's not have this culture that the moment you get the EIA crisis, everything is done. Actually, to me, when you have gotten the EIA license, you have done even 10% of the work. 90% of the work is to implement the EMPs and the EIA license conditions which have been given to the developer. But you see, we are putting more emphasis on what is not important, the license. The license is not important. What is more important is the implementation of those conditions. And the EMP, the EIA what? Reports. That is where we have not gotten it right. And that's where we have all these problems. Thank you.
And when you talk about implementation, Marian, I'm thinking of well, largely the current legislative framework is we have a command and control legislative framework, and there has been suggestions that we should adopt a more incentive-based and a more voluntary, a system that encourages voluntary compliance. And in the current situation, and when we're talking about self-governance, are you seeing as if it's practical that we can expect self-governance within these organizations, within this industry, and within companies that are looking for the fastest way to proceed with their core business? Yeah.
Thank you very much for that question. Maybe if you allow me, I would start by saying a bit about waste management, a concern that has been raised by one of my fellow panelists. Maybe it's just good to clarify that what is the role of NEMA in waste management and what's the role of the county government in waste management. The county government have a responsibility of collecting municipal waste. Ideally, that's their role, they're supposed to collect it. But of course, we know because of the challenges they have not been able to collect everywhere. So their bit of waste management is mainly on municipal waste. But of course, the MCA has a requirement that your waste is your responsibility. So yes, so we as NEMA will require that you take care of your waste. But the other thing I wanted to clarify is on the role of NEMA in waste management, mainly. Of course, one, knowing that even as it is in the Constitution and it is as Section 3 of MCA, NEMA has a role of ensuring that every Kenyan has a clean and healthy environment. So we regulate waste management. And because the county government has a responsibility of collecting the waste, then they have to have someone regulating them. And that's why in regulating, we issue licenses. So the county government also is expected to get a waste collection license, waste transportation, and waste disposal license from NEMA. Now, when it comes to hazardous waste and other forms of waste, then the NEMA controls that by issuing licenses, of course, which have conditions, like the professor has clearly stated that we give good conditions that if monitored, for sure, we should be able to have a clean and healthy environment, or if complied with. So I hope that answers the question on what the county government does and what NEMA does. Now, on the issue of self-regulating, I think it's ideally the way to go. It's the best way of doing it because if I knew what is right and did what is right for the sake of the environment and everybody, then that would ensure that the government has less work. And yes, incentives would help, but I would say maybe because of where we are as a country, it might take some time before we really self-regulate. And my thinking would be, the first step would be that we create awareness. That for sure, as the regulated community, or as an owner of a factory of an industry, I understand the benefits of complying with the law. If I would understand, not even just the benefits of complying with the law, if I would understand the benefits of doing it right, because, for example, if we take the cleaner development mechanisms in place, if we implement those small steps of maybe regulating what goes out of my, like for example, ensuring that I save on water, or I save on energy, or whatever it is that I need to do. If I put proper measures in place, then it would benefit my company more, then that would help in people complying with the law. Of course, with many other incentives, like I know our education department tries to give incentives to list the best companies that are controlling the environment or are have put in place measures to protect the environment, or have had good CSRs. So such incentives would, in a big way, help in ensuring that the environment is clean, and of course, people regulate themselves. Yeah, thank you.
Rita, maybe you can tell us about the draft EIA regulations of 2017, and maybe shed a little more light on any specific provisions they may have that will concern the oil and gas sector. And while you're doing that, I would also like to give an example of a landmark case that was decided in South Africa last year, where the court ruled that an EIA process should be repeated to the extent that it should consider climate change impacts for the establishment of a coal plant, or it was the one establishing a coal plant. So the requirement was that the EIA report should consider climate change impacts. Are the EIA draft regulations that progressive? Are they moving towards more environment consciousness and more? Are we looking at the present scenario?
Thank you for that question. Regarding the new regulations for EIA, they're actually now being called Strategic Integrated Environmental Impact Assessment and Audit Regulations. Just to mention that with the acknowledgement of NEMA who are here, that these are regulations that have been reviewed, actually have gone through the process of national validation, and I'm sure there are members here who were able to take part in that exercise. First of all, they were to be aligned, of course, after NEMA was aligned to the Constitution, and now to bring on board the regulations to be at par with that and also capture the emerging issues. And as you alluded to, one of the key things that are being captured in these revised regulations are climate change impacts. So which means going forward, as lead experts, Paci was involved in doing the impact assessments, environmental impact assessments, as well as the strategic environmental and social impact assessments. They have to take on board climate change considerations. Another key thing that's being captured very strongly by the new regulations is the aspect that we're discussing this morning about public participation. It came out very strongly during the various workshops and the validation sessions that were held, that there was a big gap, indeed, as we are seeing, and we can see the effect now on how public participation is being done. Yeah, as Melba just said, now signatures are not just public participation, and what our colleague from the one who gave us this very informative address here about doing it effectively and indeed starting with information from the community. So that was something that was supposed to be captured, and to be more specific, because then how do you define public participation for just a simple project report? How do you define public participation for maybe a medium risk project and a high risk project? Of course, there needs to be some classification on how that is captured so that it is adequate, and you have a balance, not an overkill and underkill on either side. So indeed, these are regulations that are supposed to make the process to be more value adding in terms of making sure that the final outcome, the final output, which as Professor correctly said, is just about 10% of the job, when it's actually put into practice on the ground and implemented, it is something that is supposed to protect the environment. Yeah.
Shalom, regarding public participation, your work involves the levels, the different levels of public participation. You inform, you involve them, you make sure that the public is well informed by the time they are the output is being given to the person, the concerned person. They are making informed decisions. My question to you is, the public, at which point, on what areas is the community coming in? Because in every policy, in every plan, in every legislation, there are different components, including governance, including administration, including some are very technical, and then of course there is what directly impacts on community. So at which point of the whole policy formulation is community involved?
I think the community and all stakeholders, with civil society, the private sector, government, should be involved at all key milestones of the public participation process. And I think that's only because at the end of a project, at the end of an initiative, you want all of them to take ownership of it, so that one doesn't say we were not involved, one doesn't say we don't feel like this reflects what we want, what our desires are, what our goals are in trying to achieve what we're trying to achieve here. And one of the things that we're trying to do, 3 weeks ago in Ogola, the Friends of Turkana, together with Choke and other partners, brought together community members and actually for 2 days discussed public participation within the framework of the early oil. Public participation is not sufficient. It's not robust enough. I think there might be tokenistic meetings here, there might be ticking off of names there, but also in terms of the process, certain decisions may have been made to a certain extent, and then at the point of the quote-unquote public participation, it's more of an imposition on individuals. The other thing that came out was that in extractive activities, such as petroleum, oil and gas, the environment is going to be impacted, and a big part of the knowledge that is held on the environment is usually with the people that live there. And a lot of this traditional knowledge of the biodiversity from the soil, from grazing paths, is not infused sufficiently into these processes. And so questions are asked around what the validity of such exercises are if all stakeholders, because we might see a professor with 21 years of experience and say, okay, they're the environmental expert, but there might be a pastoralist who has generations and generations of knowledge and can also speak to that. And that information might not be captured well. But one trend that I've noticed, broadly speaking, within the public participation framework is that the relationship between the role that the government plays and the role that the project proponents play is something of importance. A couple of years back, and I've seen a colleague from Lamu, Mr. Somo, the chairman of the BMUs in Lamu, a couple of years back we went to a large project, a public participation on the EIA. Now when we arrived, we found clerks sitting, receiving people. It was a big meeting, it was publicized. The head of director of compliance from NEMA was coming, and there was a multitude of people. But what I noticed, and I even took pictures of, was that on the registration lists, if someone was not able to read, and this is in Lamu, in the mainland, obviously literacy levels might not be high, but people were signing on forms that were talking about women and gender meeting, talking about, there were different topics, but they were not focusing on the EIA public participation. And so my question was that if this is being signed off as something that it is not, then what is being done with this information? And so we really have to be careful about these processes in terms of saying, okay, there's a public participation discussion on an EIA today. That's what we need to do, and there needs to be an openness and transparency about that, but also not taking advantage of community members who don't know what they're signing. In some instances also, someone signs and gets something, a kitu kidogo, and I think it's a terrible practice. But I think one positive note is that a few months ago in Lamu, in relation to the Lamu port, the High Court made a decision that took environmental law jurisprudence in a certain direction, which I think is somewhat positive, but also touched on public participation, talking about how in-depth it should be, speaking more to how to build on the regulations, and hopefully the new draft regulations and that judgment and improving these practices will really help make this process more holistic and more substantive in nature.
Prof, when we are considering your work in environmental impact assessment and audit, there is you have your clients, and then there is the local participation of the people. How exactly do we balance the needs of the investor against the needs of the public? And how do we ensure that the EIA process, and I'm sorry I keep repeating and emphasizing on the importance of EIA, but how do we make it into a process that's not just about greenwashing this project, and more into a holistic and inclusive process? Again, the question, maybe Marian can also assist, is how do you prevent a situation where you're being strong-armed by investors at the expense of the people?
Yeah, thank you so much. One of the things is that we don't have actually public participation guidelines during the EIA process. I think that's a major gap that we have. What is in the regulations are quite general, so we don't have detailed guidelines. Detailed guidelines which take care of all the interest groups. For example, if you go to Rukana today, you call for a public meeting. Even the new EIA regulations coming up, they just say you put a notice for 14 days. It has just increased it from 7 days to 14 days. You give public notices. They have not said even the language. Yeah? So you can put it in English. A few people can read, others will not read. They have not said that even you can do announcements in local churches, assemblies, Barazas, and that's what we're supposed to do. That's what the guidelines should go deep to ensure that actually there is participation. You call for a meeting, you will only find men coming to that public meeting. Because men are supposed to talk on behalf of what? Everybody in the family. Even youths, rarely are they allowed to talk in public what? meetings. It's only the areas. So the guidelines needs to put in place and put it compulsory that you should be able to have a meeting with what? With women. You must have a meeting with youth. You must have a meeting with the civil society. You must have a meeting with the private sector. All these can be actually resolved by using guidelines. So we need, after these regulations, we need to put across that NEMA will develop guidelines on public participation. If you start using public participation general guidelines being used at the counties by members of county assemblies and the rest, then we are getting lost. Let's have proper public participation guidelines on this. And then the question you asked is on how do we balance as EI experts? EI experts, you have always to look at first the interest of the community, the people being affected by the project. You get their views accurately. The moment you get their views accurately, as an expert, you actually bring them to the table, to the engineers, to the developer, and everybody who is involved in that project. You discuss what the community has actually requested to be done. Then what happens is that the developer or whoever is doing the exploration, the contractors and everybody, tries to adjust their programs as per the community needs. For example, the community can say, during the month of April, we request that you don't do exploration because of these kind of ceremonies we have, etc., etc. So what we do as EI experts, we take it to the explorer and tell him, can you leave out in your program, in your schedule of activities this month? Because there are certain activities which happen within the community. So they do that. They can be able to adjust as much as possible, but there are situations where they can also go back to the community and be able to give feedback. And that's actually the other thing which is missing in our regulations. We are not required as EI experts to go back and give feedback. Like there is no regulation which makes it compulsory that after the EIA, the license is out, I should go and be able to give feedback to the community, give them the license, the conditions, and what has come out. What the contractor, what the developer has agreed to do. We have no that regulation to disclose even that license, isn't it? Of course, NEMA just gives it to the developer, and that's the end of the story. There is no disclosure measures within our EIA regulations. Yeah, those are the gaps, and they are very serious gaps. How do communities know that there is an EIA license for this activity? If the license is being given by them even in English, yeah, people in Turkana do not understand that. How can this license be translated even to Swahili and be pinned there? Even a copy to the community, it is published even in Kenya Gazette, it is published even in the newspapers. So there is all of this problem. As we are experts, we try to balance, but the gaps are there. And we expected actually the current EIA regulations which are under review to address most of these gaps. Yeah? So if they are gazetted, we will still have to continue with amendments in the near future for purposes of ensuring that the views of the public are actually integrated into the final EIA report and processes. But one of the things I need to appreciate about the amendments, there are 5 things. And my colleague has mentioned one, climate change impacts. That one has been brought up, that we did not have it in the previous regulations. The key word which these new regulations have actually introduced is what is called integrated. That word integrated never used to be in our old regulations. And that integrated has 5 major components. One is climate change impacts. Now it's going to be mandatory that you must have a chapter on climate change. The other thing which has been brought up is on cultural impacts of our project. It never used to be there, but it's now well defined in our MCA 1999 amended in 2015 that cultural impact needs to be integrated. Then we have social impact. It's now mandatory, it's within the regulations. Then we have health implications. Health implications, now it's mandatory that you must be able to look at what will be the health implications of a given project. And finally, there is archaeological assessments. Archaeological assessments in partnership, for example, with the Kenya Museum, National Museum of Kenya. It's going to be mandatory now for all EIs. So these are very important things that have come into the EIF process that we never used to have them. Initially, we used to do maybe a paragraph because they were not mandatory, but we are making progress. There are new things coming up that will be included and they will be able to solve most of these problems. Thank you.
So if I could just share a bit more on the same. Starting with public participation. It's true we appreciate the challenges we've had with public participation with in cases where there is not even representation in some cases. But as NEMA, there are a number of things we have put in place. One, agreeing with Professor that participation in environmental impact assessment. Maybe the question is how many of us know about it? And agreeing with Professor, it is still in English, making an effort to see if we can translate it to Kiswahili so that it can help in creating awareness on, what is the EI process? What is the EI itself? What is the process? What is the role of the community in the EI process? Because then that way it would simplify it a bit so that the community or the project affected persons are in a position to participate actively. Because like Professor is saying, and of course like most of us are saying here, is that many a times people just give the signature because they may not quite understand what this is about. So yes, we have a guideline, maybe we need to share it a bit more. And of course it is expected that even after the amendments, we should be able also to review that guideline and ensure that it aligns with the amendments, and also for purposes of ensuring that it's more detailed for the community to understand. The other thing I wanted to mention is about the EI process and the experts. Yes, we have, in our case, we know that we have registered experts who are consultants, private consultants, who enter into a contract with a proponent to prepare an EIA. I must say that for small projects, we've had a challenge, a big challenge with experts working with the proponents. But I would say that from my experience with the EI process, most of the time for the big projects, we get good professionals who are keen to do it right. So I wouldn't say that it has been a big challenge with them making sure that the concerns of the residents are raised, or the concerns of the project affected persons are raised with the proponent. But also just to mention that we have measures of trying to ensure that the environmental considerations are not compromised because of the challenge of the proponent the expert being paid by the proponent. And we have a code of practice in professional ethics that every expert has to comply with. And the other thing is, even as NEMA, once we receive the reports and we review them, and we feel that maybe there are concerns that were raised and have not been adequately addressed, that's why the law has a provision for a public hearing, where we now as NEMA go to call for a meeting and are able to listen to the public or to the project affected and be able to from the ground. So I think that's another way of just trying to counter-check and ensure that the process is not compromised by the fact that the expert is paid by the proponent. And of course, we also have the Institute of Environmental Experts in Kenya, which is also supposed to help with that, ensuring that these experts comply with the law. And So about the feedback, sorry, I think a professor has raised that. Yes, it's a big gap that even after comments have been received, people have given their comments, they never get to know, I mean, what happened. And many a times I know that becomes an issue when we are consulting or calling for a public hearing, and people are saying, the other one you called us, we gave your comments, and you still, when they're able to evaluate it and say, I mean, if there are adequate mitigation measures, then we still go ahead and issue. I know the problem has been that the thinking with the community is that as long as they have said no to the project, then it shouldn't go on. But ideally, what Professor is proposing would really help deal with most of these problems. Because if we had a way of going back and explaining why, even after they said no, why we still went ahead and issued a license and why this project is being implemented. I think that has been taken care of for the strategic environmental assessment, because the strategic environmental assessment has a requirement for a workshop after the review of the EIA, I mean of the SEA reports. So during that workshop, you are able to respond to any concerns that the public had or the stakeholders had on the policy plan or program. So maybe for certain projects, so that we reduce the anxiety. So just one more thing. I think the way it had been foreseen was that once NEMA has issued a license, we are supposed to send it back, to send a copy. Once we have given to the proponent, we are supposed to send a copy to back then the district commissioner. And it was expected that during the public barazas, they would be able to, among the many things that they are sharing, they would be able to mention that. That has not worked, so we agree that there is more that can be done. Thank you.
Thank you very much, honorable panelists. It was a very informative discussion, and I hope it was as informative to you as well. We would like to take a few questions from the public. Because of time, let's take about 5. Very short questions.
Sorry, as MC, I will take liberty to curtail the 5 questions to 3. We have a tight ship. Sorry. 3 questions, burning ones. And has somebody not spoken from yesterday? Okay. 3, 1, 2, 3.
Thank you very much. I never expected that we could be so much limited, because it's like everybody's seeing the big gap, and it's like we started from top to bottom. If we really want to cure the disease that we are seeing, I think we have given more opportunities. For the sake of time, I'll have to confine myself to that. Already we are seeing the big gap. We now need to be told what steps are going to be taken in order to fill the gap. 2, under the public participation, you have really elaborated to explain to us what is going to take place. How about the capacity building of the community leaders and especially the representatives from the various areas? Because we are talking about litigation. We are talking of some of the issues that we are going to approach head on. We are talking about how to do sensitization to our people. What opportunities are there in order to enhance the capacity building of these people financially and all terms that can also enable them to operate, so that we avoid some of the perils that we are seeing?
Thank you for that clear panel. We would have liked a bit more time so that we can interact. I do not work in the extractive oil sector. I work in health. But over the years, many of the places I have worked in around the world, I have come across all the problems that are going on in the oil and gas sector. For example, is Nigeria, which was discussed yesterday. So I have a couple of points. I think we have a lot of problems in this area in other parts of the world. And now that Kenya is embarking on this, we could draw some lessons from those areas and avoid what has been going on in those places. Nigeria is a classic example. I've tried to do some work in the Delta area in HIV/AIDS, reproductive health, and there are a lot of problems over there, as you heard from the doctor who presented yesterday. Now, the biggest issue is we keep talking about community participation. It's really community engagement. And right from the start, we are writing all these beautiful guidelines, legislation from Parliament, which goes to the agencies, which sets out the regulations, and it's just Greek to the community in Turkana, frankly speaking. Now the issue is not just sharing of money, but the issue is what is going on with the environment. Because if you look at very many places, and we're going to talk about health later on, which is really what I want to talk about. But in terms of impoverishment, that's the word, of the communities, there are very many examples around the world. The Ogoni people in Nigeria, if you go over there, they've been crying for years of what is going on in the environment. The farmland has been affected, and agriculture in the 1980s in Nigeria was doing very well. They have some of the best agricultural research institutes. All that went down the drain when everyone moved into the oil sector. Now, Kenya can avoid that. We don't even know how much oil we have. It's estimated that it's 10 billion barrels. We don't know if that's how much we're going to produce in the coming years. But we can avoid a lot of these issues by getting the community issues, waste management, and all those issues sorted out from the word go. It's not enough for us to write guidelines and put them out there. Public education is missing, frankly speaking, right? We need to get to the ground and figure out what to do on the ground. Now, I know there was a lot of talk about NEMA yesterday, but out there, I live in Washington, but I come here very often to work. But if you talk to people in the streets, they tell you NEMA is just like a police force. And that's not the way it should be, right? NEMA should have public education. We keep talking about self-regulation. This is what is going on with EPA in the USA. We're not going to be in USA tomorrow. But EPA has this self-regulated environment where a company, if it knows that it's putting a lot of copper out of its works into the water, it will go and say, hey, listen, we've been monitoring and we found out that we're putting too much copper and we want to fix it. So they have a partnership. We've got to fix it to avoid the prosecution and all the fines that are going to come later on when EPA is going to come around. Trust me, they're going to get you. And that's what NEMA is trying to do. But NEMA is acting like a police force, and it shouldn't be that way, right? We would like to have fines, penalties, so that those companies that are encroaching in those areas feel the pinch and stop doing that. But let's have a dialogue, as the doctor said yesterday. The other thing I'd like to mention, many of the problems that we see in this sector, be it in Indonesia, where for about 60 years, the community where they're mining gold and copper has been impoverished, right? Many of those issues are coming because the government is going into bed with the contractors. Government is going into bed with the oil company, be it in Equatorial Guinea. Equatorial Guinea produces a lot of oil. I guess a lot of people don't know yet. About 385,000 barrels per day. But the money is not in Equatorial Guinea. It's banked in Washington because they don't have a central bank. And it's banked in an account of one of the ministers. So that's how it works. Now, we want to avoid that in this country, where the government is going into bed with the company. I'm glad we don't have the big oil companies here. Tullow is a fairly clean company. I know it for the last 30 years. And they have a code of conduct. And I'm hoping they're going to stick to that. But the moment the government goes to bed with the contract, bribery, money, influence, and politics, this is what is going on in this sector, then we are doomed. Now, we are not going to win ourselves from oil for the next few years. Now, a famous man called Alan Greenspan, I think you all know him, he was the central banker in the US. He wrote a book, his memoir, called The Age of Turbulence. And if you go in there, it's available now as an ebook. You can actually download it. He wrote it in 2007. And he tried to predict where we shall be in the year 2030 in terms of petroleum. Frankly, he said, we're not going to win ourselves from this stuff until it's finished. And he estimated that we're going to be using about 120 billion barrels a day by 2030. Well, we're very close to that. If you look at today's consumption from the International Energy Agency, it's 92 billion barrels a day. That's what we're using. Therefore, Kenya is the beginning of the process. We need to do better. We need to start looking at systems, not just from the academic point of view of writing the stuff. People don't even know the law, right? The education component is missing. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm joining now Konji from the Union of Concerned Scientists. My question has been reduced to an information because my learned friend has taken over everything. Now, we should watch out not to go the Nigerian way, the Ogoni way, whereby Ken Saro Weaver was slaughtered, let me use that word, just because of protesting. We don't want the Ken Saro Weavers to come to emerge from Turkana. Now, on the side of public participation, I would like to inform the panelists that there is a bill before the Senate. I don't know whether you are aware. And that bill before the Senate is defective. We have talked and complained about it. Our legal system, where are you? That bill is defective. And it should not just be passed the way it is. Sisi kama bunge la uzalendo or whatever, Wanjiko down there. Tunapeana maudhui, the inputs. But the inputs, who is there to monitor and evaluate whether our inputs zimewekwa hapo? Thank you.
My name is Onjiko. I'm a practicing advocate in the energy industry. My question is, if you don't have the proper legislations in place, why not hold off on doing like the extraction in the first place? Secondly, when we're dealing with NEMA, I've dealt with NEMA before, there is a multiplicity of duties. So you go to NEMA, you ask, according to the legislation, it states you should get a particular permit from you guys, but then you come to your offices, but then you're sent to another office, which then sends you back. Why not solve that issue as well? As for the public participation, why not deal with it in the beginning before you even authorize anyone or give the contractors the authority to do anything to begin with? That I think would solve the issue of the whole public having an issue with anything to do with the petroleum industry.
Thank you very much. So I wish to call upon Marian to respond quickly to the first question on ceiling data, and maybe also Prof, you can talk to us about lessons from international best practices. And then eventually we'll end with the why not hold off? If we do not have adequate legislation, why not hold off?
Okay, thank you very much. Maybe before I answer, maybe just to ask her for the first question to clarify a bit. From the bit of you send to this office and you send back, maybe you could give an example so that I'm better placed to respond to that.
Yeah, I'm a NEMA expert, and I have the same issue with her. Like you want to get an ETP license, you'll be sent to the water quality office.
Okay, thank you very much. If I quite got that, I'm not very sure, but let me try to respond to that. Let me start with that. About NEMA, we have the two sections we've talked about. We have the water quality section, which deals with the effluent discharge license. And we have the waste management section, which deals with several waste management licenses. Now, the two are distinct, unless it is not very clear which one you're looking for, because the effluent discharge license has to do with any liquid waste that you're discharging to the environment. So, and the two sections are clear on what is expected of them. So I'm not quite clear what the problem could be, but yes, we are able to, I mean, the two sections handle different things. So I must repeat again, sorry, I'm not very clear on what the question was, what the issue is.
I think that's okay. Maybe we could deal with that. That more clarity could come at T. Yeah.
I think what she basically wanted to know is the issue of overlaps. Overlaps in terms of legislation, responsibilities of NEMA, the Water Resource Management Authority, sometimes even the Directorate of Safety and Occupational Health. So these overlaps are there in laws, but I think of recent, if you look at the government policy, is where they are trying to do a multi-agency approach to solving these problems. The issues of particularly effluent discharge licenses. Of course, there has been that problem in the law, but at the moment it is very clear what law that what Water Resource Management Authority has to do in terms of recommendations and the issuing authority, which is NEMA. So I think the overlaps have been there, but what I've seen in terms of the new legislations, these overlaps are actually taking the multi-agency approach. Now quickly, there was a question you wanted me to respond on the issue of international best practices. The issue when we don't have regulations, why can't we stop? We don't need to stop. Kenya, we have actually a very good constitution. That's the first thing. A very comprehensive constitution with a whole chapter on the environment. You read that chapter alone, it protects Kenyans as much as possible. You go to even the Bill of Rights. There is a whole rights that Kenyans are entitled to. When you come out of the constitution, we have MCA, which is quite comprehensive and it is being amended. Then we have, under MCA, we have had several regulations which have come up, which cut across all the sectors. So the petroleum sector is not unique. Those regulations actually cut across. We are not going to make regulations just specifically for the petroleum sector. Those regulations, if it is protection of wildlife, wetlands, forests, they happen to be the same regulations which have to be applied on the other side. It's other amendments over there. But I agree with you, there are gaps, because you cannot legislate on something which has actually not been there. But I think by the time we go into production stage, food production, which is like 4 years, you find that we have sufficient regulations in place. But from experience, I've also seen that we are lucky in Kenya, that the companies currently doing exploration, they seem to, where there is a gap, they go for international test practices. And I see when we interact with them as consultants, they are far ahead, above our laws and the regulations. They practice them. When you compare Kenya with South Sudan here, it is terrible. The constitution does not have all that what we have here. They don't have even a law. There are no laws. Yeah? There are no acts of parliament. There are no regulations. There are no guidelines. So everything what is being done there is even international practices are not adhered, where companies take advantage of the political instability in the country. You know, adherence to these laws also means some expenditures. You have to spend more to comply. But Kenya, we are lucky that international practices, they come in where we have actually a gap. I need also to finalize by saying that Kenya, we are a signatory to about 250 international environmental agreements. 250. This is what we call the NEMAs. So those ones also provide the best practices international what we can do. So we have all that we need in Kenya actually to move ahead. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and asante.
Thank you, and my apologies to the panelists, I don't mean to rush you off the stage. But in the interest of time, and particularly because the next panel, there are some people who have to leave for some appointments, I want to honor their time and to make sure that the panel is on time. Now, remember yesterday, my promise to you was what? If you get this right, I owe you lunch. My promise to you yesterday was what? Aye, all of you. You know, in academia, life is hard, so I might have to revisit that lunch promise. But in any case, what we just saw here was a spark. Tumasha tu, sindio? Inaanza. Yani hata haijaanza kunika spark tu. So now let's come back to the second session after tea. It's 11. Let us be back by 11:15 so that we can be on time and allow the next panelists to actually really interrogate a matter that matters to us as Kenyans' health. So 11:15 tea is right by the corner. Thank you.